You did what, Grandma? Daniel's voice cracked like thunder across the dining table, his face pale with disbelief. The lawyer's words still hung in the air like a ghost that refused to fade. I changed my will, I said calmly, my wrinkled hands folded neatly on the table. Everything I own, the house, the savings, the land, is no longer yours. Their mouths fell open. Sarah, my eldest, clutched her husband's arm like the ground beneath her was about to give way. My youngest, Lily, looked ready to faint. For years, they had waited for me to die, whispering in corners, checking if I was sick, fighting over who would get what. They thought I didn't notice. But I noticed everything. Now, as my lawyer handed them the new document, the one that left everything to someone they never expected, the room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah's face turned red. Mother, you can't do this. You don't even know what you're doing. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, I said softly, looking her straight in the eyes. And it's time you learned what happens when greed blinds the heart. Then, I stood up slowly, my cane tapping the floor. Their shocked faces followed me as I walked away. None of them said another word. They were too busy wondering who had replaced them in the will. If only they knew what led me to this moment. It started a year ago, when I realized my own children were waiting for me to die. I had always been proud of my family. I raised 3 children alone after my husband, Robert, passed away. We didn't have much, but I gave them everything. My love, my savings, my time. I worked at the bakery every morning and sewed clothes at night just to pay their school fees. I believed that love would be enough to make them kind. But I was wrong. It started small. Sarah stopped visiting as often. Daniel only came around when he needed money. Lily, the youngest, still called, but always with a reason. Mom, can you help me pay for the car repair? Or Mom, I'll visit next week, if I'm not too busy. They used to come home laughing, bringing the grandchildren, filling the house with life. But slowly their visits grew shorter. Their eyes stopped shining when they saw me. Instead, they looked around the house, noticing the gold-framed mirrors, the land papers, the jewelry box Robert had given me. Then one day, I overheard them talking. It was at Sarah's house. I had just stepped out of the guest room when I heard my name. She's getting old, Sarah said. We should start thinking about how to divide her things. My heart sank. Daniel laughed softly. Well, she can't live forever. Maybe it's time we encouraged her to move into a care home. Once she's there, we can take care of her property. I stood there frozen, my hand gripping the door frame. My children, the same ones I'd sacrificed my youth for, were waiting for me to die. I went back to my room quietly, pretending not to hear. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of Robert. He used to say, the true test of love isn't what they say when you give. It's what they do when you have nothing left to give. He was right. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I pretended nothing had happened. When Sarah called, I smiled. When Daniel asked for a loan, I sent him money. I even offered to babysit Lily's children. But behind that smile, I was planning. One evening, I went to see Mr. Thompson, my husband's old friend and our family lawyer. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time, then sighed deeply. You're a strong woman, but this will hurt them, you know that? He said. Yes, I replied, but maybe that's what it takes to open their eyes. He nodded and started drafting a new will. I spent weeks thinking about what I wanted to do. I didn't want my property to go to waste, but I couldn't leave it in the hands of those who had already buried me in their hearts. Then I met someone unexpected. Emily, a young nurse from the local clinic. She took care of me when I fell sick that summer. She visited me even when her shift was over, brought me soup, fixed the leaky tap in my kitchen, and called just to check if I'd eaten. She reminded me of the daughter I used to know, before greed turned her cold. One day, Emily told me she was struggling to pay her rent while also taking care of her sick mother. That night, I cried, because I realized that kindness still existed, just not where I had expected it. And so I decided, my will would go to Emily. Every single thing. Weeks passed. My children continued their act of love. Sarah brought flowers, not because she cared, but because she feared I might leave her out. Daniel started calling every evening, pretending to ask about my health, but always circling back to Mom, What's in the will? Lily suddenly became sweet, calling me her dear old mum. I played along. I laughed, told them stories, even hinted that the will was still in their favor. But deep down, I waited for the right moment. Then it came, the day I called them all for dinner. I told them the lawyer would be there. They came dressed like it was a royal feast. Sarah wore her best jewelry, Daniel brought wine, and Lily hugged me so tight I almost believed it was real. But the moment Mr. Thompson read the new will, their smiles died. Sarah slammed the table. You gave everything to some stranger? After all we've done for you. I looked her in the eye. All you've done? You waited for me to die, Sarah. You didn't love me. You loved what I could leave behind. Daniel stood up, his face red with rage. We're your children, not some nurse off the street. And yet, I said, my voice shaking but firm, she showed me more love in 6 months than you did in 6 years. The silence that followed was so heavy it could break the walls. Then, something happened that made the night even worse. The front door burst open, and someone stepped inside, holding something that made everyone freeze. The front door creaked open, and every head turned. The sound echoed through the room like a warning. Sarah gasped. Daniel's hand froze midair. Lily's eyes went wide. Standing in the doorway was Emily, the nurse. She looked small against the heavy shadows of the room, holding a brown envelope close to her chest. Rain dripped from her coat. Her hair was damp, and her eyes flickered nervously from me to my children. Mrs. Anderson, she said softly, her voice trembling. You forgot to sign the last page. The room went dead silent. Daniel shot up from his chair. She was the one, he roared, pointing at her. This girl is the reason you're ruining our family? I stayed calm, though my heart was pounding. Emily, I said gently. Come in, dear. Don't be afraid. She stepped inside hesitantly. Sarah's face twisted with disgust. Unbelievable, she spat. You brought her here? To our family dinner? Your family, I said quietly, my voice sharp as glass. This is my home. And if I recall correctly, you 3 only came here to collect your share of it. Sarah's jaw tightened. Daniel glared at Emily like she was a thief. Lily looked between us all, tears brimming in her eyes. Mother, Lily whispered. You can't do this. You can't give everything to a stranger. We're your children. I turned to her slowly. Are you? Because for a long time, I thought I didn't have any. Emily set the envelope on the table. The lawyer picked it up and cleared his throat, breaking the thick silence. Mrs. Anderson has requested that this be signed and finalized tonight. Once I file it tomorrow, the new will becomes legally binding. The color drained from Sarah's face. Daniel clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. You're making a mistake, Daniel growled. When she dies, this nurse will sell everything and vanish. You don't know what you're doing. I stared at him steadily. No, Daniel. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm teaching you what love without greed looks like. Emily looked at me, her eyes wide with gratitude but also fear. I could tell she wanted to leave, to run away from the angry stares. But I reached out and took her hand, my frail fingers pressing into hers. You stay, dear, I said. You've earned your place here. That simple act, me holding Emily's hand, was enough to light a fire. Sarah slammed her palm on the table, so hard the plates rattled. You're humiliating us. In front of this stranger. No, I said, lifting my chin. I'm reminding you what you've become. The words cut through the air like thunder. Then Daniel lunged forward, snatched the envelope from the table, and tore it open. The lawyer shouted, Stop. That's a legal document. But Daniel ignored him. He unfolded the paper, scanned it, and his face turned the color of ash. She's serious, he said, voice trembling with rage. It's all gone. The house, the land, the savings, all to Emily. Sarah looked like she might faint. Lily covered her mouth with both hands. Emily looked at me, tears in her eyes. Mrs. Anderson, I don't deserve this. I never wanted. But before she could finish, Daniel snapped. You don't deserve it, he shouted, stepping toward her. You tricked her. You used her kindness. He grabbed her arm roughly. She winced. Let her go. I yelled. my voice trembling with fury. But Daniel didn't stop. His anger boiled over like fire. This is our inheritance, Emily. You're not part of this family. Then something inside me snapped. I picked up the glass of water in front of me and threw it against the wall. It shattered loudly, the sound shocking everyone into stillness. I said, "Let her go." I screamed. Daniel froze. His grip loosened. Emily pulled her arm free, trembling. For a long moment, no one moved. Only the sound of rain filled the silence. Then I spoke, my voice low and steady. "Get out." Sarah blinked. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Get out of my house. All of you." Daniel's face twisted in disbelief. "You're throwing us out? Your own children?" "Yes," I said. "Because tonight, I finally see who you truly are." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Mum, please. Don't," I said, cutting her off. "Save your tears for when you learn that money can't buy peace." They didn't move. So I pointed at the door. "Go. Before I call the police." It was the first time in my life I'd spoken to them like that. Firm, cold, final. Slowly, one by one, they left. Sarah muttered curses under her breath. Daniel slammed the door so hard the windows shook, and Lily lingered the longest, crying silently before she turned away. Then there was only me, Emily, and the lawyer. Emily knelt beside me. "Mrs. Anderson, I didn't mean to cause all this." I looked at her kindly. "You didn't cause it, dear. You only helped me see the truth." The lawyer folded the new will carefully. "It's done," he said softly. "By tomorrow, it will all be official." I nodded slowly, but as I watched the rain slide down the window, I felt a heavy ache in my chest. I had stood my ground, yes, but the price of truth is never light. Emily helped me to my room, tucked me in, and sat by my side until I fell asleep. But that night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside. At first, I thought it was the wind. But then I heard a whisper, faint, angry, familiar. "She can't do this to us," a voice hissed. "If she thinks she's won, she's wrong." I froze. The voices were coming from just outside my window. I peeked through the curtain and saw the beam of a flashlight, two shadows moving in the rain. One of them was holding something metal. I gasped quietly, my heart racing. It was Daniel. And he wasn't alone. The rain poured harder, drumming against the roof like 1,000 angry fists. My heart pounded so fast I could hear it in my ears. Through the curtain, I saw Daniel's shape, tall, tense, angry. The second figure beside him was harder to recognize, but I could see the faint glow of a cigarette in the dark. They were whispering, but I caught bits of their words through the wind. "She changed everything," Daniel said, his voice tight with rage. "Do you know how much that house alone is worth?" "Then what's the plan?" the other man muttered. His voice was deep, unfamiliar, maybe one of Daniel's friends. "Simple," Daniel said coldly. "We make her change it back. Tonight." My breath caught. My cane nearly slipped from my hand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own son, standing in the rain, plotting against me. I backed away from the window slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. Emily was asleep in the guest room, and the lawyer had left earlier. It was just the two of us in the house, two women, one old, one young, and now danger outside our door. I hurried down the hallway as quietly as I could, my slippers soft on the floorboards. The wind howled outside, shaking the windows. When I reached Emily's room, I touched her shoulder gently. "Emily," I whispered, "wake up." She stirred, blinking. "Mrs. Anderson? What's wrong?" "Shoo," I said, pressing a finger to my lips. "Someone's outside." Her eyes widened instantly. "Who?" "Daniel," I whispered. "And someone else. I think they mean to force me to change the will." Emily sat up fast, fear flashing across her face. "Should we call the police?" "Yes," I said. "Use my phone. Quickly." But when she reached for it, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The house phone was in the living room, and my mobile was still charging beside my bed. The living room was near the front door, the same door I could now hear creaking softly. My heart stopped. They were inside. Emily froze. "Oh no," she whispered. I grabbed her hand and motioned toward the wardrobe. "Hide," I said. "Now." We both slipped inside, closing the wooden doors carefully until only a sliver of light peeked through. I could hear the faint splash of wet shoes on the tile floor, then Daniel's voice again, closer this time. She must be asleep. Let's get the papers and make her sign something new. If she refuses. He didn't finish the sentence. My stomach turned. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying to quiet my breathing. Emily clung to my arm. They walked further in. A beam of light swept across the hallway, a flashlight. Then came the creak of my bedroom door opening. She's not here, the second man muttered. You sure she's alone? Yes, Daniel hissed. That nurse left earlier. It's just her. Emily's grip tightened on my arm. She looked like she might cry, but I shook my head gently. Stay quiet, I mouthed. I could hear Daniel rummaging through drawers, muttering curses under his breath. Where's the stupid will? Maybe she hid it, the man said. Fine, then we wake her up. She'll tell us where it is. Footsteps moved back toward the hallway, toward us. I held my breath as the beam of light danced closer and closer to our door. Then suddenly a loud crash, the sound of something falling in the kitchen, echoed through the house. Both men froze. What was that? The second man whispered. Daniel cursed under his breath. Maybe the wind knocked something over. But I knew better. It wasn't the wind. A moment later, we heard another noise, footsteps quick and steady. Then a woman's voice rang out sharply. Who's there? It was Mrs. Green, my next-door neighbor. I had given her a spare key weeks ago after my fall in the garden. She must have heard the noise and come to check. Hide, the second man hissed. Daniel panicked. Turn off the light. The flashlight went dark. I could only hear shuffling and the sound of a door creaking open. The back door, maybe. Then silence. Mrs. Green's voice called again. Hello? Margaret? Are you all right? I stepped out of the wardrobe, my legs trembling. In here, Mary. I called, my voice breaking. She rushed in and turned on the light. When she saw my face, pale and shaking, her own expression turned serious. Good heavens, you look like you've seen a ghost. They were here, I said, clutching my chest. Daniel and another man. They came for the will. She didn't ask questions. She pulled out her phone and called the police immediately. Within 20 minutes, 2 officers arrived. They checked the back door. The lock was broken. Muddy footprints led from the garden to the kitchen. The officer took notes while another inspected the area. Looks like they didn't take anything, one said. Probably got scared off. Emily stayed close to me, still shaken. I could see the guilt in her eyes. As if all of this was somehow her fault. It's not you, dear, I told her softly. It's their greed. That's what's killing them. When the officers left, Mrs. Green stayed the night with us. But even after the lights went out, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my children, my own flesh and blood, could fall so far. I remembered their faces when they were young. Sarah with her missing front tooth. Daniel bringing me wildflowers. Lily singing in the garden. They were once so innocent, so full of love. But something had poisoned them. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was me. For giving them everything without teaching them how to value it. That thought hurt most of all. The next morning, I made a decision. If they wanted war, I would give them one. But not with anger, with wisdom. I wouldn't let their greed destroy the peace I had left. I went to Mr. Thompson's office again. He was surprised to see me so early. Margaret, he said kindly. You should be resting after last night. I sat down calm but determined. No, Mr. Thompson. I need to make sure there's no way they can touch a single penny. He nodded slowly. You want it sealed legally? Yes, I said. Everything. The will, the house, the land, all locked in Emily's name. They'll never get it, not even if I die tomorrow. Mr. Thompson leaned back, impressed. You've got quite the spirit, Mrs. Anderson. I smiled faintly. I'm not just a grandmother, Mr. Thompson. I'm a mother who's learned the hard way that love without respect is dangerous. He drafted the final papers, stamped them, and gave me a sealed copy. I tucked it safely into my handbag, feeling lighter than I had in years. But peace never lasts long in a story like mine. That evening, as Emily prepared dinner, there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp knocks. I frowned. Who could that be? Emily wiped her hands and went to open it. Then I heard her gasp. I turned toward the door and froze. Standing there, soaking wet, eyes dark with fury, was Sarah. And she wasn't alone. Sarah stood at the doorway, rain dripping from her coat. Her eyes blazing with fury and something darker, desperation. Her lips trembled, but her voice was firm when she finally spoke. "Mother," she said, "we need to talk." Emily stepped back a little, unsure of what to do. I was still seated in my armchair, my heart pounding. Beside Sarah stood a man I hadn't seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it hadn't smiled in years. His eyes darted around the house, sharp and cold. "Who's that?" I asked quietly, though I already feared the answer. "This is my husband," Sarah replied. "And we're not leaving until you fix this mess you've created." Her husband, Peter, stepped forward, his boots leaving muddy prints on the rug. "Evening, ma'am," he said in a deep, heavy voice. "We heard you've been making interesting changes lately." I straightened my back, my cane resting across my lap. "If you're here about the will, I'll save you the trouble. I won't be changing it." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Mum, please don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder?" I said, my voice calm but icy. "Sarah, you broke into my house last night with your brother. You frightened me half to death. What more could you possibly want?" Her eyes flickered, a flash of guilt appearing for a moment before she buried it under anger. "That wasn't me," she snapped. "I didn't even know Daniel did that until this morning." I studied her face carefully. Maybe she was lying. Maybe she wasn't. Either way, her being here now was no coincidence. Peter cleared his throat. "Look, Mrs. Anderson," he said slowly, "we all know you're not in the best health. You're being influenced by people who don't have your best interests at heart." He glanced at Emily. Emily stiffened. "Excuse me." Peter gave a thin smile. "You heard me. People who show up out of nowhere, pretending to care, but really they're after your money." I could see what they were doing. They wanted to make me doubt her. To turn me against the only person who'd shown me genuine kindness. "Peter," I said softly, "you don't know what kindness looks like because you've never given any." His face darkened. "Watch your tone, old woman." "Peter," Sarah hissed, but she didn't sound sorry, just scared. Emily stepped closer to me protectively. "You have no right to talk to her like that," she said. Peter turned on her. "And you have no right to interfere in family matters." He took a step forward. I saw Emily flinch, and that was enough to send a wave of anger through me so strong I forgot my age. "Not one more step," I shouted, slamming my cane against the floor. The sound echoed through the room like thunder. Peter froze. Sarah looked shocked. Even Emily blinked. I stood, my knees shaking but my voice firm. "You two listen to me. You may have forgotten, but this is my house. My roof. My name on the deed. You don't get to storm in here and demand anything." Sarah looked as if she might cry. "Mum, you're making a fool of yourself. Everyone in town is talking about how you left everything to that nurse. Don't you see how crazy this looks?" "Crazy," I said softly. "Crazy is when your own children start counting the days until you die." Sarah's mouth opened, then closed. She had no words. Peter, however, wasn't done. He stepped forward again, his voice low and threatening. "You're not thinking straight, Mrs. Anderson. Maybe it's time someone helped you make better decisions." Emily tensed. "Are you threatening her?" Peter smirked. "I'm saying she needs a bit of guidance." That was the moment I realized. He hadn't come to talk. He'd come to control. Sarah stood beside him, silent, trapped in his shadow. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. "Sarah," I said, "I don't know what that man has told you, but this isn't the way. If you love me, go home. Now." Sarah looked torn. Her eyes flicked between me and her husband. "Mum, please just reconsider." I said go home. My shout seemed to shake the room. Sarah flinched. Peter grabbed her arm roughly. "We're leaving," he muttered. "But this isn't over." As they turned to leave, he stopped by the door and looked back. "You think that nurse will still be around when you're gone? She'll sell this place the minute you're buried." I didn't reply. I just met his stare until he broke it. Then the door slammed behind them, the sound echoing like a thunderclap in the silence that followed. Emily sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "Mrs. Anderson, are you all right?" I nodded, though my heart still raced. "I'm fine, dear. I've been through worse." But that wasn't entirely true. Inside I was shaken. The storm outside raged harder, wind howling against the shutters, lightning flashing through the windows. I couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning, that something darker was still coming. That night, I couldn't rest. I sat by my window, watching the rain and thinking about Sarah. I remembered when she was little. How she used to fall asleep in my lap while I told her bedtime stories. How she used to hold my hand so tight, afraid I'd disappear. Now she looked at me like I was the enemy. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but I wiped them away quickly. I couldn't afford to be weak, not now. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, but my heart was still heavy. Emily brought me breakfast, trying to cheer me up, but I could tell she was worried too. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked quietly. "I hope not," I said. "But if they do, I'll be ready." She smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you think." I chuckled softly. "Maybe. But strength means nothing without wisdom." After breakfast, I decided to visit the lawyer again, to make sure everything was secure. Emily insisted on coming with me. As we walked out to the car, I felt the cool breeze against my face and tried to breathe in peace. But just as Emily turned the ignition, a dark car pulled up across the street. The windows were tinted. We both froze. The driver's door opened slowly, and out stepped Daniel, his eyes full of fire. Behind him climbed out another figure, Peter. They stood together, watching us in silence. And then Daniel smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "Mom," he called across the road, "we're not done yet." This story to be continued in part 2. Please subscribe to this channel and on the notification. Thank you.